We're live now.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to our second episode of Muslim Matters. I'm your host, Abubakar Nanabawa, the director of the Muslim Vote Initiative. Last week, I set out the scene of the political scene of this country and why I think you should get involved in politics. Today, I want to talk to you about one of the most important methods of getting involved. Now, there are various different methods, and the method today I'm going to talk about is not necessarily the only method, but is a method that we at the Muslim Vote work on, operate on, and encourage people to get involved in. What is that method? Well, voting. Voting is the most basic form of civic engagement. It is the first place where people can express their feelings about the direction of this country, elect new leaders into position to change that direction, and create a vision of a country that aligns with them, their beliefs, and their set of values. So, so why vote? Why vote? Because voting is the easiest way to make change in life without having to go through extra steps. How can I prove to you that voting makes a difference? Well, in the post World War II period, uh, the people of the UK voted to replace Winston Churchill, who had been the hero of World War II for many people around the world, including many Brits. He had led Britain through the Battle of Britain, through the war. And when the soldiers returned and those who had stayed in the country voted in the next general election, they did not vote for Winston Churchill again. It was a big surprise to everyone. Instead, they voted in the first ever Labour government. This Labour government, why did they vote them in? Well, because they promised a big set of reforms. They established the NHS, improved education, established free food for poor children, and established social housing. Clear proof that your vote makes difference. They could have continued with Churchill, who, like I said, had been an inspirational leader to many during that period, but instead they decided to use their vote to create a path and a society which would reflect the great sacrifice of them had made during that World War period. In the last election, thousands and thousands of people voted to leave and abandon the Conservative Party. Now, many of those votes went to the Labour Party, and many went to Lib Dems and Lib Dems, Independents, Greens, Conservatives, Reform, whatever. But thousands of people changed their votes. Why? Because they had come to the conclusion that 12 years of conservative austerity or conservative policy had failed them, whether that be on austerity, immigration, or any other matter. So have we seen the change that that people would have liked to see from the last general election, from their votes? Well, that's very hard to tell because I can't tell you on what basis people voted for. But there are a few key issues which did drive their last election and where changes have been made by this current government. The first the first one that I'd like to focus on is surrounding Palestine. The last Conservative government, was given legal guidance on the on Palestine, on around selling arms to Palestine, and refused to publish it. The current Labour government, run with David Lammy as a foreign secretary, sorry, not foreign officer, foreign secretary, has published have still not published the guidelines, but did suspend a small number, a small but still significant number of arms sales to Israel. Um, so why did he do this? Because there was an electoral pressure on the Labour Party by the votes of thousands of people across different parts of the UK, including Leicester, where Shocker Adam won his seat, and Leicester and in Leicester East, the Labour Party lost their seat because thousands of voters stayed with Claudia Webb, uh, or Zafar Huq, of the Lib Dems, instead of going back to the Labour Party because of their position on Gaza, thus giving the seats to the Conservative candidate who ended up winning the seat. This clearly shows you that a change in your voting behavior can cause a change in the direction of travel of the government. Um, What other changes have we seen, and what other changes would we like to see? What other changes would people have liked to see? One common complaint that came on as I was meeting people across the country, asking them about their frustrations, asking them why they wanted to see a different government. The word austerity kept coming up over and over again. This idea that their communities had not been invested in, that they had been overwhelmed, and that for too long they had been ignored. Um, this was a sentiment I heard again and again from all different parts of the United Kingdom. So have we seen a change there? Well, again, I'll leave that up for you to see. But there have been a couple of important bills and a couple of important events that we have seen. So we did see the first budget of the Labour government pretty soon after the after they won their office. What we did see was a huge investment into the NHS. They poured millions, if not billions of pounds into the NHS and have successfully cut down waiting time lists. Now, again, I could people can make decisions about whether that has been good enough, far enough, or whether that is their method has been the correct method. But waiting time lists have been significantly cut down under the Labour government so far because of investment into the NHS. They immediately ended strikes by junior doctors by offering them a pay rise, which was thus accepted, and um, created a slight change in the atmosphere of the NHS. Now, again, I'm not making any value judgment on whether this was the correct approach or not, or whether they acted correctly in acting this and ending the strike, or whether the agreement struck was the correct agreement. But ultimately, your vote, the way that people voted across this country to say that we, do not want to continue with conservative or austerity, or we do not, and we want further investment into our public services, force the government to prioritize our NHS, a national treasure in the eyes of many people across this country, force them to invest into the NHS, force them to put money back in, therefore cutting the huge budget of huge crisis we had in wait time lists, etc. Um, so again, huge success for voters who would have had that as a priority. What other issues around the economy would have mattered to people? Well, child poverty continues to be a huge issue for many people across this country. It is devastating. It causes a huge number of social and political issues for any society. Um, and the government have started to take some steps to readdressing it, and release and have commissioned some new reports. But there was one key vote in which there were a number of Labour MPs suspended from the party for opposing the party line and voting to end the two-child benefit cap. The Labour government have argued that currently at the moment it would be financially irresponsible to end that end that cap, and to promise more benefits to people. However, the Labour Party, certain members of the Labour Party and certain MPs, publicly and privately, have said that they believe that this cap is cruel, that it forces innocent children who have played no role in this kind of movement, in this austerity, who have been innocent, and have been born into families bigger than two, uh, outside of their control, should not face the negative consequences of those actions and should be given the opportunity to have access to benefits, to ensure that they have access to good food, and other things that they might need in their day-to-day lives. Uh, so whatever side of the argument you may fall on, whether you think a two-child benefit cap is appropriate, as it is a parent's responsibility to act, or whether you think a true two-child benefit cap is cruel, your vote makes a difference, because you could vote for parties, MPs, and candidates who would oppose or support the cap on the way that you suggest. So remember, every vote you make can make a difference. You just have to know what platform each party is standing on, what platform each individual candidate is standing on, and how it will impact not only your life but the life of those around you. The third kind of big debate that continues to go on around the country is the debate around immigration. Um, there is continuous debates about levels of legal and illegal immigration into these countries. The Conservative Party famously ran a number of schemes to discourage illegal immigrants. Um, and again, the success or lack of success of those programs, I will leave up to you to decide. With the Conservative Party claiming that they are necessary steps to prevent the flow of potentially dangerous people into the country, with other campaigners saying that these immigrants are not in fact illegal but legitimate refugees who have come to this country via unusual means, but means by the only means which they can claim asylum in this country due to safe and legal routes to claim asylum for people where there are very few routes available outside of Ukraine and a select few other nations. So again, wherever you fall on this side of the debate, your vote can make a difference. You could vote to have a country with stricter border controls and pressure your MPs to support that, or you could vote to support a nation where refugees are welcomed, where those who have been under prosecution are welcomed and brought into the country and provided with support and the opportunity to live a new life. But again, this is not a value judgment for me to make. This is a value judgment for you to make. This is a value judgment for you to make when voting for your elected officials. Do you believe that these elected officials will act in the best interests of of the country, or do you think and align with your values, or do you think that they will act in line with the values of their party? So, how do we make a decision when electing, when choosing who we elect for party office? That's the second question we have to ask ourselves, right? I've told you, there's these different debates that happen, and sometimes we make a difference, sometimes we vote in a certain way, and the government does not enact promises that they have kept. Um, and again, I can even discuss how we can deal with that in a moment. But how do we deal with the fact that we have we have a parliamentary system which enables us to vote once every 5 years in national elections? How do we ensure that vote is used effectively? Well, there are three things that decide predominantly that kind uh, of decide how people vote in general elections. Number one is political party. Is this member of parliament in the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, Liberal Democrats, Greens, Reform, what formerly was UKIP, etc. Those are all. If you're in Scotland, SNP, and obviously if you're in Wales, Plaid. But obviously those are more regional parties. But or in some cases, more recently and quite famously, is obviously independence. So people will vote on party affiliations. Why? Because party affiliations is the easiest way and the quickest shortcut into understanding what and how any MP will behave, what set of values they hold, and the direction that they want to take the country in. Each party publishes a manifesto. It's really important that we read these manifestos. You don't have to become an expert and break them down in detail, but often times we can look to different news sources who can condense and explain these manifestos to us in simple and concise terms. So what do these manifestos often talk about? Well, number one, and probably most importantly, the manifestos talk about economic vision for the future of the country. They talk about where they want to invest, where they see the future economic direction of this country, whether they believe there needs to be more cuts, further investment, uh, privatization of public sector, further investment into the public sector, whatever their vision for the country may be. This is where they have the opportunity to outline that vision. And more often than not, this is where we hold our MPs to account from, right? We say, okay, when you campaigned, you came to me, you on your party website, it said you would support XYZ policy. Most famous, Liberal Democrats in 2010. They very famously campaigned on tuition fee abolishment. They got elected in 2010. Not only did they support, not only did they fail to support tuition fee abolishment in their coalition with the Conservative government, they actually supported the tripling of those tuition fees. Again, they argued it was to protect the fiscal future of this country. But when in doing so, they broke their promises. Um, Now, in 2010, thousands, if not tens of thousands, of university students elected in, um, or young people voted, and parents who wanted to give their children the opportunity to have free university voted for Liberal Democrats candidates, and they saw some of their most successful results in 50 to 100 years. Post that period, obviously in 2015, they saw a dramatic loss in seats. Why? Because people had lost trust that they had produced a manifesto which made a claim that they would abolish tuition fees. And in 2015, they failed to stick to that promise, and therefore they lost the support of many of their younger voters who they had made those promises to. So we have to look at the manifestos of these parties, understand them, and understand what we are voting for, because this will be the program. If it might not be the exact, but it will be the skeleton of what they are looking to deliver and how they're looking to deliver it. Housing obviously is another important issue that normally comes up in these pieces, with them talking about uh, building targets of building new houses, whether it would be through the private sector and reform to our structures of planning permission, or whether that be through the public sector and increase funding to councils to build more public housing. Again, these are questions for moral value judgments for you to make as to whether you believe these are good ideas or not. Um, what other areas come up in these? Well, foreign policy often comes up in these manifestos, whether it comes to their beliefs around tackling uh, the Ukraine crisis, or the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia, or whether it be their foreign policy on segments of the Middle East, their policy on arms exports to different regimes around the country, their policy towards further cooperation with the EU or our other um, national allies, whether it be United States or the Commonwealth. You will find their positions on this often in the manifesto. Um, and then obviously you'll find their position on a range of social issues in these manifestos, including things like immigration. Now, whether immigration is a social or economic issue, you'll also find their position on immigration, whether they want to increase immigration, decrease immigration, whether they want to have a more a relaxed approach to refugees, or they want to take a more hardline approach. Again, you will find this information within their manifestos. So that's the first kind of way people vote, and that's based on party. Often, people historically have voted on parties based on family history, or because that's the party they support. Now, increasingly, we are seeing a change that people are going looking at party to party, from election to election, and this kind of entrenched voting of one party throughout a person's entire life is slowly changing. Um, And it is a good thing for democracy that people analyze the the records of the political parties that they are supporting. So that's number one. Number two is the personality and the track record of the MP that they are voting for. Now, I'm going to use Jeremy Corbyn as an example here, because Jeremy Corbyn stood as an independent in Islington, where he has been an MP for many years. Now, obviously, Jeremy Corbyn did not succeed at becoming prime minister of this country. However, he was voted for in and quite comfortably defeated the Labour Party in Islington North. When people have been asked in the constituency why they have voted for Jeremy Corbyn, they often cite his record as a constituency MP in the area. What does that mean? Well, it means that when people come to him and they ask for casework being, I have an immigration issue, I have a social issue, I have a housing issue, whatever issue it may be that the MP can assist in, or our local community centre is getting shut down, for example. Our council council needs extra funding from the government to fund XYZ project. How your MP, if you write to your MP should be responding and engaging with you to tackle those issues. So Jeremy Corbyn, essentially over his many years in Parliament and the Labour Party, had developed a good relationship as a constituency MP in his area and was successfully voted in the last general election as an independent. Why? Because they voted for there's two things. They voted for the values that he expresses, which are obviously more to the left of the current Labour Party, but also they voted for him as an individual because of the work that they say he has done for the local community. So these decisions that people make are often based on the personality and the track record of the MP that they are voting for. Um, there are probably plenty of other examples of successful MPs who have had very strong records of delivering good casework. Uh, and then the final thing that people will often vote based on is just pure gut, because ultimately politics can sometimes be confusing for many. Politics can be difficult to digest, difficult to understand, and oftentimes people just vote based on their gut feeling. And this is a perfectly legitimate way to vote. Uh, and your gut feeling can often be informed based on thousands of mini interactions. So sure, looking at the manifesto, understanding the history of your MP, etc., and their voting record is really important. You can also just use your gut to vote. Now, where are the big challenges when it comes to voting? Well, number one, and I think this is often the case for me, it seems the biggest challenge for Muslims in this country um, is actually persuading to people that their vote actually matters and that they should register to vote in the first place. Now, this may become because of a kind of lack of belief in the political system. Do I blame people for these beliefs? Oftentimes, no. Um, but as I have explained in the last two episodes, well, at the beginning of this episode and the whole of the last episode, I am firmly of the belief that if we engage consistently and persistently, we can make real change to our government infrastructure, and people can make changes to the country based on any set of values that they have. Um, all right. So number three, I want to talk about. Okay, I've casted my vote. I've um, I've elected in my MP, whoever that may be, whether they be from the Labour Party, Liberal Democrats, Conservatives, Reform, or Independent. Um, how do I engage with them for the next 5 years? And this is something that we need to really work on as a community, as individuals, to ensure that we have MPs who do not only come to win our votes, but MPs who believe that have to deserve and respect our votes. What do I mean by this? So let's say in 2024, I vote in MP. So, example, let me say this MP is for the benefit of the people of Leicester. Let's say this MP is Jonathan Ashworth. In 2021, I vote in Jonathan Ashworth. In 2023, an event happens, like October 7th, where I feel uh, outraged about the response of my MP and his what I would perceive the lack of support for the Palestinian people. Of course, he would push back against that uh, and explain his decision in another way. But I'm trying to get a point here. Now, why do you think that Jonathan Ashworth did not respond uh, to the asks of the constituents and vote for a ceasefire or call for weapons ban in 2023 when hundreds, if not thousands, of his constituents asked him? Well, one possible explanation, and I'm not saying it is the explanation, is that there was a lack of engagement in the intervening years, in the 3 years between. And I'm not talking about engagement from one or two people. Often in our communities, there will be three, four, five, six very actively engaged people who will visit the MP regularly, or, I say three, four, five. We'll be fortunate if it is three, four, five, but there might be one or two alongside, obviously, local councillors who will regularly engage with the MP. We need to make it a matter of urgency that we engage with our MP on a range of issues consistently, on issues that matter to us. Why? Because if the MP can see that, okay, these people are not just flashes in the pan, that they are not just here that they can provide a real electoral threat to the future of my seat, that they can prevent me from gaining re-election, then they are more likely to respond to the needs of their constituents. Because as much as MPs are voted in by their constituents, oftentimes they can forget that they are there to serve their constituents. We can be that reminder for them. We just have to hold them accountable. So, well, how do we hold our MPs accountable and how do we engage with them? Well, number one, really importantly, we need to build relationships. Okay, our relationship with MPs does not always need to be antagonistic or um, fighting, but we do need to build relationships. That means we need to go and visit them during their constituency hours. Tell them about local issues, national issues, international issues that are going on, your opinions and suggested actions. Email them. Email your MP's constituency office. Email them about casework. Email them about bills that you see coming up. Um, and and where possible, obviously, there are template emails that come in around issues. Try and personalize your emails and send in specific emails rather than just template emails. Um, Call their constituency office. Often, this is perhaps one of the best way to reach through to an MP. But call their constituency office and ring them and talk to them. Invite them to local events. Um, and don't just invite them for photo ops. Of course, politicians are going to come and they might want to take photos, etc. Again, that's for you. I will leave that to your discretion as to whether you would, but force them to engage with the community. So don't just call them to local events and then just sit there nicely nodding your head and showing deference towards them. Remember, MPs work for you. You pay your tax, which pays their wages, which means that you should be asking them tough questions. You should be asking them about their positions on certain key bills. You should be asking them how they understand um, certain issues, whether it be local, national, or international. And by doing this consistently over a period of time, you will create an environment where MPs respect uh, the vote of the community, but also know that this community is organized enough that if I do not, if I work and do not vote in ways that represent my constituents, that my constituents can actually vote me out, right? And that is the real change that we think we can make as a community, as a group, as individuals. So, but you can only do this if we build up consistent relationships. Um, and finally, um, use our social media. Social media, I know, often is mocked and maligned, but MPs will put out updates about what they're doing on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can use that as an opportunity to reply to their tweets and say, okay, I'm a constituent from your area. What is your position on X, Y, Z? Will they necessarily respond? Maybe not. But is it a good way for you to raise questions and issues that they might be facing with not only them, but to the wider community? Absolutely. Um, so finally, in this kind of last 10 minutes, I want to go through two key bills where I think we should have been and can continue to be active in ensuring our MPs are held accountable and vote in the way that represents the values and the wants of their local constituents. The first bill I would like to really highlight, and a bill which I have been asked to help a couple of people on recently, is the assisted suicide bill. Now, for those who do not know, assisted suicide is a bill recently proposed and that has recently passed second stage of parliamentary procedure. Um, Proposed by Kim Ledbetter, a Labour MP, which suggests that for those with terminal illness, um, the the Labour government um, would allow patients to request and ask for, um, that they be assisted in ending their own lives. Assisted dying is actually the correct word. I do apologize. Assisted suicide is probably loaded. Assisted dying bill. Now the arguments for this are that when people are facing terminal illness, where they are in high levels of pain, and often they're in pain which they can do very little, um, where campaigners say they can do little about, they feel like they should have the autonomy, but bodily autonomy, to ask doctors or loved ones to help them end their lives early. Um, on the other hand, campaigners against the assisted suicide bill have assisted dying bill have pointed to a number of potential issues with the bill, citing the fact that individuals can be pressured into supporting into uh, you know asking for the assisted dying provision, or that they may feel like they are burdens to their family and therefore um, need to end their lives so that they stop being a burden. And they also argue that during a time where palliative care is underfunded, pushing for an assisted dying bill is reckless. Kim Ledbetter and other campaigners for the bill will obviously say that they have put in strong legal protections to prevent that being the case. Now, this is a very emotionally loaded topic, and there are many social, religious, economic, there are so many factors to be taken into account here. But what we should be doing is, whatever your opinion is, we should be talking to our local elected officials about this. And I'd just like to highlight one case where I was recently told about an MP from the Liberal Democratic Party. He was one of, I think, three Liberal Democrats who opposed the assisted suicide bill. And when I was trying to inquire in his area as to why he ended up making this decision, I was told that he visited local disabled charities, local mosques, local churches, um, campaigners, etc. Who and he voted, met with people on both sides of the argument, and it was in this process that he actually made the decision to pose the bill. Why? Because there were people who were actively going out of their way to meet him, to talk to him about him, to educate him, to assist him in understanding um, the bill and why they believe that this bill was potentially damaging. So even though the party line and the majority of Liberal Democrat MPs voted to support the assisted dying bill, because of local campaigning and local pressure, he actually voted against the bill. So it does show you that local campaigning can make a huge difference. Um, so just to get back to this, so the bill is about to come up for its third stage, and we don't know an official date as to when the third reading is going to be done and voted on. But if this bill passes the third reading, it will become the official law of the land of this country. Now, in the second reading, the bill came very close to basically falling through and failing. Um, so with the change of about 50 MP votes, you could switch the vote from a success to a failure, which means anyone in who has a strong views about this opinion should be actively campaigning to encourage their MP to vote in a way that aligns with their conscience. Why? Because this bill will have uh, huge impacts on this country and huge impact on the lives of people across the nation. Um, so it's really important that we engage with our MPs. And like I said in the example of the one MP of Liberal Democrat MP who opposed it, um, you can change MPs whose party may have supported the bill. You can change their mind and encourage them to vote for or against the bill. Regardless of the opinion, it is important that we engage because engagement is the first step to making long-term serious change. Um, the second change that I would like to kind of focus on is recent change to government foreign policy. Now, recently, the government has announced its plans to reduce the foreign aid budget um, and use that reduction to increase aid spending in military capacity to get to the UK to about 2.5% of spending, 2.5% of their annual GDP on defense. Again, everyone will have their own opinion on this on both topics, whether they believe aid spending should be increased or decreased, and also whether they believe defense spending should be increased or decreased. But these are judgments that come in the tunes of tens of billions of pounds. 0.5% of the British GDP is not 0.5% of mine and your house budget. They can make huge differences to the lives of those who may receive the aid and also of those of potential military contracts that may be received on the military capability of this country. So, so yeah, we're trying to establish how we can make a difference here, right? Well, recent reports have come out that many Labour MPs, while supporting a rise in defence spending, are sceptical and oppose moves to reduce spending on foreign aid. Um, Now, these are reports that come out in the press, right? We want these to be publicly, if people support maintaining a foreign aid budget, then they should be trying to pressure the MPs to come out in support of foreign aid. If they believe that they MPs should be opposing foreign aid and they think it's a bad waste of money, they should be encouraging their MPs to come out and say that. Why? Because democracy thrives on transparency and accountability. If we just find out about what's happening in politics via anonymous briefings that go through to the BBC, uh, Channel 4, or etc. And I'm not saying these anonymous briefings are not important. Often, anonymity can play an important part in political life, but our MPs should be telling us how they feel on any given bill. They might not immediately know how they may vote or act, but these again are key changes and we should be saying to our MP, okay, well, what are your thoughts on decreasing foreign aid budget by 0.5%? What potential impact do you think that could have on our country? What potential impact do you think that could have on those people who are going to receive the foreign aid? What impact will that have on Britain's international standing? Could this reduction in foreign aid by UK and other allies mean that there are harsher economic conditions for those abroad, leading to higher rates of economic migration towards Western countries. These are all legitimate questions that we should be asking our MPs, and also we should be asking them about an increase of our budget on defense spending. Ask them um, about what their opinions are on recent remarks by President Trump on Zelensky. Ask them about their positions on the Russian-Ukraine. Um, I say war, but obviously the illegal invasion of Russia. The illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Ask them their opinions on how uh, they they see the best way forward, whether they want to advocate for diplomatic solutions or whether they support a recent announcements by Keir Starmer that there is potentials to send British troops to secure that those borders. But again, these are all questions that we have to ask our elected officials. Without consistent engagement, without understanding how they have voted historically and how that might predict their future voting pattern, without working and reading the manifestos of our political parties, we cannot become agents of our own future. It is only by educating and engaging with the system that we can understand how the system is going to impact us, impact our families, impact us at home, and impact those abroad. If we want to be agents for positive change, then we need to start with being agents of engagement. Voting is the lowest form of political engagement, but the consequences of voting can often be the highest. Engaging with voting at a higher level and educating yourself can also become a higher level of political engagement, whether it be our local councils or our MPs. These decisions will have huge impacts on our lives in the short and the long term. From investment into our NHS, education, and public sector to um, to climate change and future military spending. These are big questions for us to answer and for us to be a part of. Whether you believe in further privatization or further public investment in our public services, or whether you believe in further planning reform to encourage private sector investment into buildings, or you believe in council housing, the building of houses by the council, every single person should every single person has an opinion on these matters, whether it's strongly educated or not. On instinct, they will have opinions on these matters. It is important that if we want to be part of that change, and if we want to be agents of change, that we engage in that process. And the first way to engage in that process is obviously via voting. Your vote can make a difference. Your vote can shape the future of this country. And so I hope that in the next set of local elections, you get up and you use your vote. It can impact something as simple as bin collections, the quality of roads on your street, the quality of how street cleaning. These are, and really importantly, the level of tax that you have to pay. These are all issues that we are going to have to deal with. So become agents of change. Unless your next local elections are coming up soon, and your city council elections will be coming up in 2027, we have to start engaging with those processes early. And if you're a person who thinks you can make change, get involved in those processes. But remember, the first step of engagement is voting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.